For more on this, we're now joined by Director and Chief Economist at Econometrics, Dr. Azar Jammine, and he joins us via our video link. Dr. Azar, thank you so much for joining us here on the late edition on SABC News. Perhaps let's start off here. What are your expectations? Many are saying that they don't see a growth in the third quarter for the year. What are you expecting from the data that will be released on the GDP tomorrow?
I think the analysts that you've just interviewed painted a fairly realistic picture of our expectations, and that is that if there was any growth, it would have been marginal, and that there is a fair chance that actually the economy may have contracted in the third quarter. The data that we do have up to date on the basis of monthly figures that have been released by Statistics South Africa, including mining and manufacturing and electricity production, all recorded declines in the third quarter. The challenge is whether or not other sectors such as the trade sectors and tourism and especially agriculture, which can be very volatile, may have come in positively to neutralize the negative impact of the productive sectors of the economy, that's mining and manufacturing.
And Dr. Azar, you also speak about load shedding, and it's always a topical point in our country and how it contributes to the economy. You know, what sort of role do you think, looking at the third quarter, that load shedding may have played, at the same time looking at the logistics problems the country is currently facing?
In the third quarter specifically, I don't believe that load shedding necessarily would have played such a negative role compared with the second quarter. I don't think there was a huge increase in the intensity of load shedding in the third quarter. We have seen an increase in the intensity of the load shedding most recently, but we are now well into the fourth quarter. It's when you look at the logistical side, what Transnet has done in terms of limiting the level of exports as well as the amount of goods coming into the country, where you could have seen a significantly negative impact.
When it comes...
And the other effect that would have weighed down on the economy in the third quarter is what was mentioned in your preamble, the fact that interest rates have remained relatively high, and this is weighing down severely on the finances of many consumers, those who are certainly in debt.
What does this mean for job creation if, we are not expecting much growth there in the third quarter?
You know, it's a little bit of a mystery here, because we saw that in the third quarter, according to the quarterly labour force survey, there was a tremendously strong performance in terms of job creation. Nearly 400,000 new jobs were created, according to the QLFS, in the third quarter. And this was a bit of a mystery. On a year-on-year basis, the growth in jobs was 8%. Now, if you follow that figure very closely, then you would forecast that the third quarter GDP figures would have been very strong. But one suspects that what we have been seeing is a bit of a catch-up in the wake of COVID and what that had done in this terms of destroying jobs. Initially, after the recovery of COVID, we had very little job creation. It was almost as if businesses had used COVID as a good excuse to downsize and work towards a more meaner and leaner dispensation. But it's possible that more recently they have been taking on many more workers, because they find that things have not collapsed completely, and they need to now catch up.
What impact, Dr. Azar, will this have on the next announcement for the interest rates in the country and the overall inflation? If you're already saying that, things are already tough for consumers in South Africa, do you foresee things even getting tougher? Some experts were saying that, because of the interest rates remaining unchanged, perhaps come next year we can start seeing it go down. What are your predictions here and what this essentially means for interest rates?
I don't think that this will have a huge impact on what happens to interest rates. Yes, theoretically, if the figures are very weak, then there will be a tendency to expect the Reserve Bank to be under a little more pressure to cut interest rates. But right now, inflation remains too high for them to contemplate a cut in interest rates. In fact, and last week there were quite a few who were expecting them to increase interest rates. You're going to see a fall in inflation in the next couple of months because of the cuts in fuel prices, some of which will come into effect on late tomorrow night. But if you look through to the following few months, you could actually see inflation then picking up again.
Yeah.
Because a year ago in January, fuel prices came down very sharply. And so on a comparative basis, we will see the year-on-year food inflation rate rising quite sharply. And with inflation set to remain close to 6%, the upper end of the inflation target, in the first few months of next year, I think there will be very little chance for the Reserve Bank to think of cutting interest rates. If we are going to have cuts in interest rates, they will be later this year than later next year rather than earlier.
And what picture does this paint when it comes to the results we are expecting for the fourth quarter in South Africa?
The fourth quarter, unfortunately, the picture is starting to look quite bleak, isn't it? With intensified load shedding and with an intensification of the logistical problems, as well as weak commodity prices. Whilst tomorrow might see positive growth, there's a bigger chance that the fourth quarter will see a contraction than the third quarter.
All right, Dr. Azar Jammine, thank you so much for your time.